Hi, it's Writing Wednesday, and I'm up here in Idyllwild, California. I was up here for the launch of the Chimes of the Lost Cathedral, my new book. Um, it's brand, its first appearance anywhere was last night here at Idyllwild Arts. They have a writer's week, and I was invited to read from it. And um, this was it was wonderful to do it here because I did a lot of the writing of Marina M. And Chimes right next door to where I'm staying right now. We'd come up in the wintertime and um, stoke the stove, and I would write that Russian book. I love the mountains, and certainly winter up here was much more like a Russian winter than winter in Los Angeles. So I wanted to do Writing Wednesday. Last night was the first reading of the book. So I wanted to maybe do a Writing Wednesday about reading your book, performing your book. It's something that writers do. It's something that writers have to do these days. You can't just write your book and send it out and expect that people will necessarily find it, connect to it. Usually bookstores, you have a tour, bookstores will have you come. And at any stage of your writing development, it is really good to learn how to read your stuff out loud. I was in a writing group many, many years ago where most of the participants were actors learning to write, and mostly they were writing a screenplay. But being in that workshop and seeing actors reading their work was a, hey, Aziz, watching actors reading their work, usually for someone else. A bunch of actors would read, take different parts. I learned so much about giving a reading. And as I started to develop my own, I don't say develop my career, that's pretty grandiose. When I started writing short stories, I found from time to time I was invited to come and read. And you need to expect to be able to do that. And one of the things that was extremely helpful for me was to read to small children. Small children are not polite. If they're bored, they will get up and walk away. So you learn how to hold an audience by reading to small children. And then the wolf came out. You really can tell whether you have your audience or not, which is a very useful skill that will hold you your whole writing life. The first thing is just reading, thinking about having to perform a piece will sharpen your perception. Hi, Linda. I am in the mountains, and Facebook is having trouble today, so I'm doing the best I can. Hopefully, at least you can hear me, if not see me. Let me make sure the sound is as high as it can go. Oh, let's try that. Is the sound better? That should be good. Okay. The thing about doing reading your stuff out loud, even way before anybody's asked you to perform it, is that you start to think differently about the piece. You start to panic a little bit. It's like, oh my God, I've got to read this. Wow. You read it out loud. It's like, that doesn't play as well as I thought it did. So it already, thinking of it as a performance piece, sharpens your perception. It stimulates your desire to compress the prose, to to make the words more lively, more interesting in their sound. I got to put a hat on, the sun's out. There we go. To put more, it gives another draft. It gives another lens to look at your work when you think, oh my God, I've got to perform this in front of an audience, which is always a good thing. Anything that makes you want to sharpen it. There's nothing like knowing you have to perform it to sharpen. Even now, I'm sort of editing it as I read it. So that's the first thing, is treat all of your work as stuff that can be potentially performed. Then what do you select when you are going to give a reading? It's good to have the solid elements of fiction writing, to pick a dialogue scene, because when people start to speak, it brings the novel into real time and sharp focus. So I often give, if I'm taking an excerpt, give a very brief explanation of the elements only that the audience needs to know to understand the piece, or sort of understand, like, where the piece. You don't have to explain. When you try to explain the whole book leading up to that scene, believe me, you've already lost your audience. Your toddlers are wandering off by that point. So it's just like, last night I read the section of Chimes of Lost Cathedral that has the agit train. So I did have to explain what an agit train was, and a brief, like 1 or 2 lines about who my character is, and then just jump in, figuring that in a novel everything is holographic. As you've written it, you should be able to open it anywhere and know where you are, who you are, what's going on, basically who the good guys, who the bad guys are, and the writing itself should be vivid enough that it brings the reader in. So good writing is essential, and I like an action scene where something happens. There's a lot of, if there's a good conflict, and a dimensional world, that will bring the audience in. It's very important to not read so slowly that it seems very self-indulgent. But if you're nervous, you tend to read too quickly for the audience to absorb what's happening. So think about, if there's a laugh, you have to stop and just for a moment and let the audience have a moment to have a laugh. If you read too quickly, you miss the beats of, like, a revelation, a moment of where there is a bit of humor. So a little pause gives you emphasis, just like punctuation marks do. So notice when you read it out loud and you're timing it to make sure that you're not overstaying your welcome. If you're reading with 7 people and they've told you 5 minutes, do not read over 5 minutes. The other people hate you, the audience hates you, the people who read after you really hate you. So be a good citizen, hit the read it, time it, make sure that you're on the nose as far as the reading time. But read slowly, read slowly enough that the audience can absorb what you're saying, but read quickly enough that the life is still in it, that it's lively. It's not just my husband is a comedy writer, and he said the reason they have directors in TV and in films is not to help the actors with their performances, to make them read faster, because they so glory in their voices and stuff that it slows down the whole thing and you lose the excitement. So the other thing is to read it enough, read it over and over, enough that you can look up from the book, that you know the material well enough that you can look up and still be saying the words and look down, up, and down. So it's halfway to memorization. And that makes a good performance when you can look at the audience instead of just looking down. Really connect to those toddlers and keep them in there. And if you tend to be a very mild person and someone who is uncomfortable with performance, you especially need more rehearsal, more and more, until you are comfortable with the material and being able to do that. Pick an action scene, maybe a little bit of setup, a little bit of description, but no more than a paragraph before you get into the scene, whatever you've chosen. I am, it's nice to have a few different pieces under your belt if you have a book. A short story, you learn to excerpt, and you can alter things as you discover what works and what doesn't. When I was in New York, I a couple times ago, I was in the special collections at New York Central Library, the one with the lions, and they had a copy of Dickens' reading copy of A Christmas Carol. So he used to read that and make money as a performer of his work. And that thing is so marked up. He cut stuff, he added stuff, he moved stuff around. You do not have, if the work is already in a journal or already fixed, you can alter it for reading. You can excerpt, you can take a little, you can read a paragraph and then talk a little bit and then connect it to the next piece and then read that. Whatever is really vivid, best writing, that's what you read. I'm on the road this month of July with Chimes of Lost Cathedral. It's out, and I hope to see you at one of the readings. On my website, there's a tour list. On my Facebook page, there's a tour list. Hope to see you. Hope you enjoy reading it, and open to any questions. I don't even know if this is going to be a viable film for anybody to see, but I thought I would show up. Anybody, if there's any questions, let me know. And I will see what happens. All right, thanks. Bye.